everybody, and today we're talking about my fall TBR. I've been watching quite a few of these videos because they've been coming out over the last couple of weeks, and I just want to put in my 2 cents because fall is like my favorite. It's the best time for reading. I feel like it's when you get all the kind of like weird new releases and when you're just in the mood for it. You're moving from kind of the classic beach read rom-com-y thing to stuff that's like a little more quirky, a little weirder. It's when I start getting more into fantasy. There's been a lot of really cool new releases this year that I'm really excited to read. So because I have a lot of course readings to do this term, this is gonna be more of like a fall/winter hopeful kind of video. It's gonna be very overly optimistic for what I will realistically be able to finish, but there we go. I've been really in the mood for kind of more like gothic reads, and definitely some nice little vampire books will hopefully be coming my way. So let's just jump right in. So actually first up is my current read. This is The Wolf and the Woodsman by Ava Reid. I kind of started this back in August, but then I kind of set it aside as I was starting my new course and kind of like getting caught up and head on readings and get settled into Halifax. But I'm hoping to jump back into this soon. I'm really enjoying it so far. I'm like not quite halfway through actually yet, so I'm not super far into this, but I do really like it. This is actually the first Ava Reid book that I read, which feels slightly sacrilegious because I feel that I should have read more of her books by now. But I see why people hype her up so much. Like, I absolutely love her writing. Just the world building that she's doing so far is so interesting because basically our main lead is like a wolf girl. So she comes from this villain that kind of follows the pagan gods, and she kind of winds up on this mission with the king's heir. And they are very devout. They follow a different kind of religion. They require a sacrifice from one of the wolf girls every year. Avika her village does her dirty and she kind of gets swapped for the person that they actually want. And she kind of winds up having to run around the kingdom looking for these kind of like magical objects. Help the heir in this kind of magical quest. There's a lot of enemies to lovers setup going on here. And I really love Avika's character because she's not as kind of aggressively religious as the prince is, but she still very much believes in the pagan gods, but she kind of just takes it as fact. So it's interesting to see their dynamic of her challenging him, but her also being kind of brought up short by his kind of more active practice for these things that she's just sort of taken as a fact of life. So that dynamic is really fun. Next up, I have one of my other physical books that I brought along with me to Halifax, and that is The Starving Saints by Caitlin Starling. This is a medievalist horror novel, and I'm really, really excited for it. Basically, this castle has been under siege for quite some time, and then this kind of mysterious woman and her attendants are somehow able to make it into the castle walls, and really weird stuff starts happening. Very kind of like Bacchic rituals, kind of like crazy stuff. So we have multiple POVs from people with kind of like varying levels of trust for the newfound inhabitants of this place. So I'm really excited for this. I think it's going to be super weird. Next up, I have quite a few books that aren't very like explicitly fall, but they're just things that I have now that I want to read soon. And who says fall and winter isn't the time for a nice little rom-com? So first up I have This Summer Will Be Different, which obviously is more of a summer novel, if the title didn't give that away. But this is the book that my best friend got me for my birthday. We always give each other a romance novel. So this is by Carly Fortune, who is very, very popular on Book Talk, Bookstagram, and I presume BookTube. I haven't read any of her books yet actually, but she's a Canadian author. All of her novels, as far as I know, are set in Canada. This one's set in PEI, so I'm really excited for that. It's essentially about this girl who, and every summer she kind of tells herself that she's not gonna hook up with her best friend's brother, and then every summer she does. So obviously they kind of have this persistent pull to each other, and when she's kind of forced to come back to PEI to help out her friend, their relationship kind of changes. So yeah, I'm really excited for this. I'm excited to see what all the hype is with this series and this author. Next I have the RomCommers by Catherine Center. This one I'd actually never heard of before, but it sounded cool when I was just like browsing in the bookstore, so I picked it up. This is about two screenwriters. So Emma is kind of tasked with helping a more established name fix his script for a new rom-com, which she thinks is absolutely terrible. We have some like rivals to lovers nonsense going on here. And it just sounds delightful and very fun and very kind of nostalgic for like the 90s, 2000s rom-coms, which I would enjoy a resurgence of, because Anyone But You did not do it for me. Next up I have Alive and Wells by Bailey Hanna, and I feel that this, at least cover-wise, is a bit closer to the fall vibes that we're looking for. So this is obviously cowboy romance again, if our cover model didn't give that away. But basically Cicely, our main character, is running from a bad relationship, and her friend hooks her up with a job on this farm. The foreman, not too impressed with her, he doesn't think she's gonna be sticking around for very long, but she kind of proves him wrong. Again, another Canadian author, which we always love, and I enjoy a cowboy romance. Sometimes I do get pulled out of it when things are just like very clearly wrong, or like a little bit, things that hit a little bit too close to home to me as someone who like grew up on a farm are like overly romanticized. It pulls me out a little bit, but I still can enjoy like the fantasy of it, you know? And next I have Picture Perfect by Tessa Bailey. This is one of my most anticipated romance releases of the year because I'm just a Tessa Bailey super stan. I will read every single one of her new releases, and I'm loving this series. Dream Girl Drama is probably my number 2 after It Happened One Summer for Tessa Bailey books, which is kind of crazy because I'm just obsessed with It Happened One Summer. And I'm really excited for this one because the two younger guys on the hockey team have been very entertaining in the previous books in the series. So I'm excited to see what she does with them. And this is gonna be very fun. It's like a fake dating kind of thing. Basically, we met our lead female character in our last book as she kind of took part in this like baseball game that the hockey team had. Very ill-advised on their part, but she was the pitcher, and Robbie was immediately smitten with her, but she's not really giving him the time of day. She has a major crush on her brother's best friend, and so she enlists Robbie's help to make him jealous and also teach her how to flirt a little bit, but I don't think it quite goes the way she planned. I never really make a plan for what order I'm gonna read things in because I just don't stick to it. And I find that during the school year, I don't read as much because I'm just reading so much for coursework and my own research that in my downtime, I don't tend to pick up a book as often, and I don't pick up super like dense fantasy, historical fiction, horror quite as often. So that's why I do have like quite a few rom-coms on the list, because it's just something that I'm kind of like more drawn to in my free time reading when I have so much course materials to get through. However, my next category for my TBR is new-ish releases that have come out in the last year that just fit the vibes. So really Picture Perfect should have been in that, but it's fine. First up, I have Blood on Her Tongue by Joanna Van Veen, which came out in March. I'm so pumped for this because I absolutely loved Joanna Van Veen's other novel, My Darling Dreadful Thing. And if this book hits as hard as I think it's going to, new auto-buy author. I'm so in love with her writing for My Darling Dreadful Thing. That book it's like if The Fall of the House of Usher and Crimson Peak were like a sapphic ghost story. I feel like you see a lot of books tagged now as sort of like gothic reimaginings, or that this is like very gothic lit fic, and it just doesn't quite hit it in the way that you want it to, especially I think in the romance genre, because it tends to just like, the thing about like eroticism and desire in kind of classic gothic literature is that it's about like everything but the physical, and that's just something that's kind of below the surface. And so I think in a lot of like contemporary gothic romances that maybe aren't trying to kind of like emulate that tradition as closely, it just doesn't work. But for me, My Darling Dreadful Thing just really hit it. It really felt like it was engaging with the tradition and kind of what I would expect from the gothic genre. But My Darling Dreadful Thing was like very much a ghost story. We had these really like creepy corpse-like ghosts, which were really fun. But Blood on Her Tongue is more of a vampire novel, so naturally I'm super excited because I will read anything with vampires if that wasn't obvious. So like My Darling Dreadful Thing, this is set in the Netherlands. It's set in the late 1800s, and it's essentially about these twin girls. So Lucy is really worried about her twin sister Sarah, who has this kind of like mysterious affliction. She's not eating, she's kind of like mumbling nonsensically to herself. And she's become quite obsessed with this corpse that was found on her husband's estate, as one is wont to do. So Lucy is trying to protect her sister from being sent to an asylum, but it becomes really clear that both sisters are keeping some secrets from each other, and Sarah seems to be getting worse. Like, she's angry and she's hungry for something other than normal food. I wonder what it could be. So I'm very, very excited to get my hands on it. I feel like it's the perfect like Halloween kind of book. Next up, I have Where the Wolf Comes Home by Nat Cassidy, which I believe came out in April, and it seems to me to be kind of like a horror thriller kind of book. So our main character is a struggling actress, and one day she comes home and finds a 5-year-old boy hiding under her bushes. And after a very weird and very violent encounter with the boy's father, she takes him on the run. The boy's father and perhaps something else follow them, and quote unquote, incidents of butchery follow them along the way. What more could you ask for? Next up, I have The Second Death of Locke by B.L. Bovolino. I'm sure I did not pronounce that correctly, but we're just going to breeze past it. We've been getting a lot of Lady Night books lately, which I'm very pleased by. I quite enjoyed The Night and the Moth, so I'm curious how this will kind of compare. This is basically about Grey, who's a knight who is extremely devoted and close with her mage, Kier. The two of them go on this mission to protect a boy from an enemy realm, but on the way, their secrets are maybe gonna come out. As it turns out, Grey is the heir to the lost kingdom of Locke, which is the seat of all power, and if she dies, so does all magic. Because the mages can like draw power from their knights, I think, which is probably why Grey and Kier are so powerful, I assume. I haven't read the book yet, I don't know. With The Night and the Moth, I did really enjoy it. I didn't get like as obsessed with it as I kind of wanted to or thought I could have. So I'm hoping that I have that experience with The Second Death of Locke. And I mean, the cover is gorgeous for one thing, and I enjoy anything with knights. I did really enjoy The Night and the Moth. I can't quite put my finger on what it was. Maybe it was like, I think I wanted like the friendships and the romances to both develop slower and go a little bit deeper. And I get the sense that maybe I'll have more of that experience with The Second Death of Locke. This came out quite recently, so I haven't really read many reviews on it yet. I've kind of been like ignoring it because I want my own experience. So yeah, I'm curious to see like how my reading experiences for those two books will compare, because they're like semi-similar, I think. And lastly for this category is The Traitor of Sherwood Forest by Amy Kaufman. And I'm kind of an Amy Kaufman fangirl, which might not make sense because this is her debut fantasy novel, but she's actually a medievalist scholar. So I don't believe she teaches anymore, but she was an English professor, and she's written a lot about medieval literature. So she's written a lot about like Guinevere and the Lady of the Lake in Arthurian romances. I have cited her many a time, and I have read a lot of her scholarly work, so I'm so excited to read her fantasy novel. And she's actually coming to speak at Dalhousie this week, so I'm really looking forward to hearing her talk about this book. And this is a reimagining of the Robin Hood ballads. So basically it's following Robin Hood, but from the perspective of one of his spies. So Jane becomes a spy for Robin Hood, and she's kind of living in the king's houses, telling him secrets about the nobility and about the Sheriff of Nottingham, and she's kind of believing his declarations of affection. He's very like charismatic kind of leader, but as his sort of schemes become like more violent, and she kind of gets implicated in this murder, so she sort of begins to question his motives and his goals. So she sort of has to decide who her loyalties are going to lie with, and if she can really trust Robin Hood. And lastly, I just have some vibey books that I want to read. A lot of these are kind of classics of like the gothic and horror sort of genres, like really foundational books in those literary movements. And then I also just have like some things that I think would be really fun. So firstly, I have Wuthering Heights because I believe that I did read this a long time ago, but I don't know if I actually finished it, which means I probably didn't. And I just feel that in order to be like properly scandalized by Emerald Fennell in February, I need to like actually finish it. I feel so nervous for that movie, honestly. I quite like Emerald Fennell's other movies, which I didn't know was like a controversial take, but apparently it is. But this one, I just don't know, because I assume there's gonna be some twist where it's not just like a straight adaptation of Wuthering Heights, mainly because of like the quotes, but also like how could it be? But I just don't know if that's enough to like rationalize how crazy everything else about it seems to be, you know? So I watch with bated breath. Next up, I have Carmilla, which was published in 1872, and people kind of call it the first vampire novel. It's not, but it certainly is the first sapphic one. And who would think that like at that time that you'd get a novel that is so explicitly sapphic as this? Because basically this is about Laura. So Laura sort of becomes friends with the mysterious and alluring Carmilla, and weird crap starts happening, essentially. This book actually predates Dracula, some of the inspiration for Dracula, so I feel like if you're just really into vampires, gothic fiction, horror, it's just a must read. If you're kind of into those kind of books, I think you should check out Dr. Rebecca Marks on TikTok, because she has increased my reading list by like 40%. So she studies Gothic literature. She teaches a course at Cambridge on the 18th century novel, which does kind of like go into the 19th century. She talks a lot about novels that are sort of like the origins of Gothic literature. So she like gives a lot of book recommendations about that. I think she's also an art historian, so she talks a lot about like visual art from the period as well. And she's just very cool. So she talks a lot about kind of like the origins of vampire fiction as well, and has a lot of recommendations on that. So I have a lot of her recommendations on my list as well. And then lastly, I just want to throw out another contemporary romance novel, kind of contemporary romance, I guess, and it's Morbidly Yours. So this is about a gravedigger. I really love all of the kind of like fall romance releases. I feel like over the last couple of years we've gotten these ones that have a similar vibe as like the Practical Magic movie, where yeah, it's kind of a contemporary rom-com. Like it just leans into the sort of like everyday paranormal stuff in a very like specific way. And that's like the vibe I get from this book. When I read a book like that, I just want it to feel the way that Practical Magic feels. And I think stuff like The Dead Romantics or even the Ex-Hex like has that kind of feeling. And I'm just chasing that high, and I feel like Morbidly Yours might deliver with that. Lastly, I thought that I would talk a bit about my course readings, because that's what will probably actually make up my fall TBR, if anybody is particularly interested. So I've just started my PhD in English Lit, and at Dalhousie, that means that you do a year of coursework first. So basically each term I'm taking 3 classes. So this term I'm taking one on the Gawain poet, one on queerness and detective fiction, and one called On Beauty. So for the Gawain poet, I'm reading the Gawain poet. So there's 4 texts in the Cantonero, is it AX something manuscript? I can never remember that number at the end, but I'll write it down. So there's 4 works basically. There's Sir Gawain and the Green Knight, which is an Arthurian romance, Pearl, which is a incredible sort of dream vision. And there's Cleanness and Patience, which are both, I don't know if you'd call them like retellings, but they're kind of like poetic works of Bible stories. So Cleanness is Sodom and Gomorrah, and Patience is Jonah. I have read these ones before. The one that I have the most familiarity with is Sir Gawain and the Green Knight. I mainly focus on romances, but I have read Pearl and Patience. And then I have done Cleanness, but like not to the same extent as the other books. So that one, I will say, is going to be more new to me once we cover that. But yeah, really enjoy it. We're reading the Penguin Classics text, so it is in Middle English, and it's just really fun. And we've started with Sir Gawain the Green Knight, which is my favorite, and it's just really, really fun. So we've gotten up to, we've just started Fit 1, which is like chapter 1. So essentially where the Green Knight has been beheaded and picks up his head and says, okay, so next year I get the return blow, and everyone's like, well, that didn't go great. But let's not worry about it quite yet. So Fit 2 is Gawain going to meet the Green Knight and kind of setting up the rest of the challenge. And then Queerness and Detective Fiction probably has the heaviest reading list. So these are all of the novels that we're reading. And then this one also has the heaviest amount of secondary readings each week, which does kind of make sense because it's the most sort of like theory forward class, I would say, that I'm taking. So I honestly don't know anything about any of these books other than that there's going to be detectives and they're going to be gay. The only book I've read so far is the Agatha Christie, and I have read Agatha Christie before, but only Hercule Poirot books. This is my first Miss Marple, and I did enjoy it. Agatha Christie is always fun. I think she's actually the only other author that I'd heard of before. And this, was there a Lou Rand one? There's maybe one other author that I'd heard of before but hadn't read. My next class is on beauty. This one's really fun because we're starting with Charlotte's Web and then ending with The Substance, which I feel like is just such a fun trajectory. And this is also going to be, I think, a really interesting because we're reading a lot of different types of books. So we're reading things that are very kind of theory heavy and a different type of academic writing, but still something that is kind of more explicitly for scholarship, like something like Elaine Scarry's On Beauty and Being Just. And then we also have like poetry, we have memoirs, we have children's fiction with Charlotte's Web, we have a horror film. So I feel like we're just getting a lot of cool different like types of writing that are all engaging with this idea of like beauty and what is beauty. So far though, we've just started with Charlotte's Web, which I actually don't think I'd read as a kid. Maybe my mom had read it to me. I'm not sure, but I did love the animated movie growing up. So I really enjoyed getting to read that. I didn't know E.B. White had also written Stuart Little. But yeah, I did really get to enjoy reading that as an adult, and like coming back to the story as an adult was really fun. So I've got a good academic list going as well. So this is my very overly ambitious fall/winter/ probably honestly into spring TBR. If you've read any of these or you've got anything specific on your list, let me know. So yeah, thanks for watching, and I should probably read something.